Good morning. Yes, I got a haircut. No, it was not with Hot Barber. Let's talk about it. Little sips between the segments. So, my hair, I don't like we don't need to spend all of the time on my hair, but I cut my own hair for nearly 5 years, started back in 2020, when the pandemic started, and that was fine for a while until just one day lost it, and I mostly it was because it's very difficult to get like your neck by yourself. And I love and hate getting a haircut. I really don't like interacting too much with the barber or the stylist or whatever because I have issues. If we get to know each other or whatever, I think that's nice. But like, so I don't always love the social element of getting your haircut, but I really do enjoy getting a haircut. And I particularly like my hair to look like I give a shit about it. And that was something that, like, when I cut it myself, it looked like I gave it like half a shit about it. And I'm like, I want to give a whole shit about it. So that led me to getting my haircut. And now I get my haircut every 2 weeks to kind of keep. And I was just thinking yesterday, like, maybe I should go up to every week. That's a lot. That's excessive. That got me into the barber shop, and then that hooked me up with Hot Barber. What I have decided is that Hot Barber can be like a cute little crush so long as I don't rearrange my schedule in order to have an appointment with Hot Barber. And the past 2 times, maybe even the past 3 times I've gotten a haircut, it has not worked out that I could have Hot Barber. And I'm like, that's a boundary. But I did get to see Hot Barber while I got my haircut yesterday. And I got to see him from an angle that I don't normally see him because he was on the other side of the place. And I was like, admiring his work. Anyway, if any of the authors out there would like to write a short story or hell, an entire novel about a Hot Barber, please do that. I will give you feedback. I will beta read your book. I will do sensitivity reading on it. I will promote your book if it's good. I would love for that to be out there in the world. Let's discuss comments. So, last week we had kind of a very special episode of Between the Cheeks that was dedicated exclusively to the Addison Beck, Madison Devlin controversy and some of my thoughts about how online communities deal with controversial issues. I think that there was a very good discussion on that video, and people did a very good job of uh, bringing an inquisitive and curious self into that comment section and engaging with it at the level that I was hoping for the conversation to be engaged with. And even one person perhaps was not being so charitable, and I lightly pushed back, and they said, "Oh, thank you for doing that." That is exactly what I was hoping for there. I'm going to leave the comments of that video on that video. I'm not going to like pull them into this episode. I kind of want that to just be contained there. So today we're just going to go through a few interesting comments on my Common Goal video, my least favorite of the Game Changers books by far. And it seems like that's a common opinion. So IVApp 1513 says Common Goal has always seemed almost cold or clinical to me compared to the rest of the books in the series. Even though it has numerous sex scenes, there's not much heat or emotion. I would still date Eric though. Me too. I absolutely agree with this, and this seems so. The general opinion on Common Goal seems to be fairly consistent. Most people don't think. Most people, I don't know that most people don't like it, but I think most people would agree that it is the weakest or among the weakest of the Game Changers books. And this is a sentiment that I have seen on some of the Goodreads reviews of the book. I've seen it on other discussions in other parts of the internet that I've had about Common Goal. I felt it as well. I mentioned this, I think, more than once in my discussion of it, that the sex scenes are so long. I do think I feel called to make a seventh Game Changers like wrap up video about everything, but I need to get through the long game first, which is the longest of the books. I'm reading it right now, and it's very interesting. But I suspect if I go back and just look at page count, word count of sex scenes, that Common Goals scenes might be the longest. And they feel very like there is an aspect of them which is like demonstration. Like here we are going to play out the emotional and physical things that you might encounter in a scene like that if you are focusing on the age gap, or if you are focusing on the dom sub aspects, or if you are focusing on edging. And I will give Reed this. There is a thematic reason to do that because, as I said, another title for the book could be The Sexual Education of Eric Bennett. But it also kind of reads a bit like it's, babies first, those kinks, those tropes, those types of things. And I think just, between the way that she wanted to do those scenes and then the constructions of the characters, which I think particularly Kyle is a little flat and not the most interesting character. Yeah, I see the sort of clinical cold aspect of it. CL Truge brought up the age gap aspect of this. I had suggested in my discussion video that a change that could have possibly improved the book was putting the concerns about the age gap onto Kyle instead of Eric, because the way the book was constructed, basically all of the obstacles are Eric obstacles, and Kyle didn't really have any. Regarding why Kyle didn't have the age gap hold up, I wonder if Rachel was worried about the optics of having the younger character resistant to dating someone older. Probably. That's what that. I think there's more going on there, but I think that's over the target. Not saying she couldn't have overcome that, but as someone who's written age gaps before, it's always kind of in your head to make sure the playing field is as level as possible. So this is interesting in that Reed did level the playing field because Kyle is so much more experienced than Eric is. I think the power differential in an age gap, usually the power of the younger person is a beauty possibility. But Kyle also is just literally much, much more experienced than Eric. So I feel like his experience and his position as like teacher already did a lot to balance the power out. And then something that is just like not explored enough for what kind of character Eric is how they were at the same level kind of culturally and artistically. It comes up a bit, but I feel like it's just sort of sprinkled in there. Uh, Eric Eric does feel a little he's isolated from his team in a lot of ways. He's isolated because he's the goalie, he's isolated because he's hiding this aspect of his sexuality, and he's isolated because he is like super different from not just everyone on his team but like all other hockey players. He's got a degree from Harvard, he's really interested in like art and cultural things, and Kyle is supposedly too. But then Kyle, I think that Reed just really wanted the age gap to feel like it was there, so she was constantly reminding us of it. And so every single time we're privy to Eric's internal thoughts, it's like, oh god, he's young, it's bad, it's under 30, age gap, rah, warning, alert. So that's exhausting. But then also I think she wanted Kyle to read young, but it comes off as immature, and that doesn't work. So he should come off as young through his like attitude and like his way of being in the world, not through like talking like a youngster. I don't think it would have been more interesting to me had Kyle felt like older than his years because of his engagement with culture and art and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, this is where it's like, I think the book just chases its tail a lot. That's established. It's where like, oh, he's going to Columbia, he's getting an art history degree, he like is able to talk with Eric about all this art. But he's also like, he doesn't care about that. He's just doing it for the lulz. He's doing it because he can. He doesn't need to do anything because his parents are rich. And it turns out like the thing that he really cares about, that he's really passionate about, is mixology, and he wants to run the bar. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily like a great exercise to say like, this is how I would have changed everything. But like when you do that, it helps highlight the things that weren't working. So like another thing that perhaps could have happened, and I know that Reed wanted to have the Kingfisher very prominent because it's like kind of the what's the bar in Buffy? The Bronze, or like Central Perk or whatever. Like it's a place where all the characters go to whenever they're in New York. But like, what if they had bought an art gallery, right? What if they had put their like shared interest, like Eric doesn't share an interest in running a bar. He just does it because he likes Kyle and he's got money to spare. So anyway, it's nice to see an author chime in and say like how like it's not easy. I'm not saying like, oh, whoa, Rachel, you should have like this is so easy. Like, it's obviously this is a difficult thing to navigate, and it's like sometimes it doesn't work so good, and this time it didn't work so good. My friend Leia chimed in about what Reed potentially learned from writing a not so successful book like Common Goal. She says, I think she learned from it. She was supposed to write a seventh book in this universe all about a new young queer player introduced in the long game, but she canceled it because she said it wasn't enough for a whole book. She canceled it even when she was under contract for a seventh book with her publication house. She will publish novellas from this universe, but that's all. Great lesson to learn, because I think that this is one that could have been a novella, didn't work so well as a full-length novel, unfortunately. I suspect that novellas that she writes will either be about existing characters. It can kind of be like reaffirming their happily ever after, or taking their HFN and turning it into more of an HEA, or being traditional romance novellas with side characters. This is what so I don't think that she would ever do what I suggested in my discussion and what I'm suggesting now, but like I think if you wanted to do a version of basically exactly the story of Eric and Kyle as a novella, it it's like maybe it could just be like an erotica. Maybe it doesn't need to have a happily ever after, or maybe you could have just like the suggestion of a happily for now. Maybe, but anyway, I don't know if people will go for that. I think the comment of the video comes from Sheila Kethley 5351, and that is that Eric experiences bi activation rather than bi awakening. I love this. I'm on the record saying that I don't love mostly the amount of bi and gay awakenings in MM romance. I looked at the top 50 most shelved MM romances on Goodreads, and like about half of them have a bi awakening, a gay awakening, or are just straight up gay for you. They're older books and they're just marketed as gay for you. I have seen a lot of bisexual people in discussions that I've had about this, mostly on TikTok, say that while they appreciate bi awakenings because it makes them feel seen, they like seeing these bisexual characters, that bi awakenings in stories often don't resonate with their own personal experience, often isn't this like bolt from the blue kind of thing. Someone else, I wish I'd grabbed the comment. Someone else said that like their process of learning that they were bisexual a little bit later in life was just like thinking, like, you journal about it and you think, I think this is me. So I do like this idea of this is a bi activation story and not a bi awakening. Eric was already awoken to his bisexuality. It seems like he had known it his whole life, or probably since puberty, and he just was in this very long-term relationship with a woman, and he never lost that part of himself. He never felt like alienated from that part of himself necessarily. It's just he never had an opportunity to act on it, and this was his opportunity to act on it. Bi activation. Authors, take note. I'm happy to read as many of your bi activation stories as possible. The bi awakening stories, I know there's going to be a lot of them if I'm going through all of the kind of culturally relevant MM romance books, that there's going to be a lot of those, but think about bi activation. All right. The other thing that I wanted to talk about today is something that I said I would do last week, but I wanted to dedicate all of last week's video to that online community discussion. In my tough guy discussion, I mentioned, I talked a little bit in that video about how Fabian is a little prickly and a little mean. And this is actually much more relevant in my role model video, which is done and edited and is actually sitting on my YouTube scheduled for Thursday. Because Troy is way more like this. He's mean. He says himself he has dedicated his career to being a prick. I said in that tough guy video that this kind of resonated for me because I was a jerk. I can still be a little mean sometimes, but I was a real jerk all through my late teens and mid 20s. And I mentioned in that video that I got some feedback about it, and that I would talk about it in a future coffee chat. We are here now. This is the coffee chat in which we will talk about it. Okay, so a couple things to throw out right at the top. First of all, I identify as gay. But if you really examine my orientation, I'm definitely bisexual. I am just more attracted to men than I am to women. I'm in a very long-term relationship, a rest of my life relationship with a man. probably would see myself, if I wasn't in this relationship, in a long-term relationship with a man. But I am attracted to some women some of the time. And when I was younger, not unlike Eric, I was in a relationship with a woman. I had a long-term relationship for 5 years between high school and college. But when I entered puberty, I also had thoughts about guys, and it has taken me a very long time to like square all those circles and work through all of that and figure out like this is what it is. But during that time that I was in like a straight passing relationship, the thing I was struggling with was attraction to guys. So I came out as gay at 25 years old, election night, 2012. From puberty through college, I just internally struggled with feelings for guys. Never acted on it. I didn't want to have those. I didn't want to have those feelings because of like, especially my school was like a very homophobic place. There was a lot of guys who turned out to be gay or bisexual in my class, and several of them just left the school, and none of us were out during school. That was kind of a rough place, and that is where I learned to be like comic deflection and being mean, and taking like the meanness that I had about myself, the like internalized homophobia, like, oh, I don't want these things, and directing it outward, and it made me into a bit of a mean person, and that got cranked up after college because I graduated in 2009, moved back to Columbus, Ohio, which is like a pretty queer town. And what app landed on the market right then when I was like single and ready to mingle, but Grinder. So from 2009 to 2012, I was DL. I was hooking up with guys, but I was not out to really anybody. And so I had that internalized homophobia and desire to deflect and push people away that I had learned on the early side of my life. And then now I had this like secret that I had to hide. So now I wanted to turn all of that up to 11. So I ended up being just like really a jerk. And it was after this feedback that I received, and it was terrible. And this is one of the worst stories of my life. And after I stopped drinking, and I talk about this in my upcoming role model video, that my personality started to change, and I think really developed into who I was supposed to be the whole time. I was getting rid of all of these layers that had built up, like, barnacles that had attached to me over time. So the feedback. What is this feedback? Oh my God, I do not wish this experience on anyone. So I worked on the Obama campaign in 2012. I was the data director for the campaign in Virginia. I was senior staff, worked out of the headquarters in Richmond. And in August of 2012, all of the state senior staffs were supposed to have like 2-day retreats where they went and they did planning for the rest of the election. Oh, did I say GOTV? GOTV means get out the vote. So we scheduled our GOTV planning retreat, which was supposed to be 2 days, but for us in Virginia, it was 3 days because we also needed to do like senior staff bonding slash group therapy. Our team wasn't gelling exactly. There was some personality problems, and there were just like there were some issues. And I was not like I was not the drama. I was not the biggest issue on display. Actually, there was like several other like personal conflicts that we had to work through together. And oh my God, this was even worse. Thank God I didn't have to deal with this. But several people who were having interpersonal conflict, we had like a facilitator who was running this whole thing, and they had us do Myers-Briggs, which is like such bullshit. I am INTJ though, apparently, if that's a thing. This facilitator had several of the people who were experiencing interpersonal conflict get in chairs sitting next to each other, and then we were all around them, and she called it a fishbowl. And then it's like they had to have out their problems in front of all of us, and we were all just like, this is terrible. So anyway, we did all of that, and I thought like, oh, whew, I'm escaping like without having to deal with any of that. But the last thing we did was terrible. There were like 10 of us, I guess, 10 or so. And after all of that was done, and some like other, it wasn't just like couples therapy with everyone in a fishbowl. There were some other things that we were doing about becoming a closer, stronger team. The last thing we did was this exercise where we were staying at a very fancy house. And we were in this really big living room, and we like came back from a break for the very last thing. And the very last thing was this woman had put uh butcher paper, like big giant like tear off sheet paper, all around the room, and put our names on the tops of each of these sheets of paper, and then drawn a line in each sheet. And what we were supposed to do is we all like got randomly shuffled around in front of one of these sheets of paper, and then we were supposed to spend like 2 minutes at each piece of paper, and in the top section above the line write a way in which this person contributes to the team, and in the bottom section, the below section, the bad section, write a way in which this person holds back the team. Like a good thing about the person and a shitty thing about the person. And then we would all move over one and then do another one. And the rules were you had to write a new thing, a new bullet point for every person. So if someone had already written the thing you were going to write, you got to write another one. And if someone had already written something that you agreed with, you had to put a check next to it. So by the end of this, you get a piece of paper from all of your closest colleagues of all a bunch of nice things about you with check marks, and a bunch of bad things about you with check marks. It was terrible. It was awful. It was like the worst experience of my, it wasn't the worst experience of my life. I've gone through much worse experiences, but oh boy, was it not so great. But it did deliver feedback to me in a pretty in a way you can't argue with, because I don't remember a single one of the like good things. I'm sure it was like Carter's very smart. He's good at making maps. In the bad things section, everyone had put check marks next to two things. One of them was Carter can be disrespectful to our external partners. And I was like shocked by that. And like what people meant was that I like really prioritized our campaign's needs over I didn't treat other campaigns in the state with the level of respect that I should. That was a very important lesson to learn. And that is something that I've really carried with me. I am very like when I have partnerships with people, I always want to make sure that they are mutually beneficial, that I am understanding and respecting them. And the fact that I acted that way was like embarrassing. And I'm really glad that I got that feedback. But the bigger feedback was just straight up that Carter can be mean. I was like, mean. And you just get this piece of paper. There's no questioning the piece of paper. You can't like argue with the piece of paper, right? And then the fact that everyone had left check marks with it means you really can't argue with it. It's like whether you think you're mean or not, the fact that everyone else does says something. So that was like a real turning point for me. And I was very depressed on the campaign, and I was like drinking very heavily. It was like not a good scene. And it took a little while after that before everything kind of settled. I got like a job in Washington, D.C., and this is where like life isn't like books, right? It's like that moment in a book would have been the pivotal moment. And then I would have been like, I have to stop drinking and come out and change my life. And it's like, it actually took like 18 more months for me to get through that. Should have just gone to therapy. That would have helped a lot. I had dealt with this all on my own. But that was the beginning of the process. That feedback sucked. It was awful. But it was important medicine. It was medicine that I needed. And I can guarantee that I I showed up in those ways because I had learned to be mean and prickly to hide myself from other people, and because I was, drinking too much, and I also learned that as like self-soothing and self-medicating. So it was all kind of related to the same thing. So when I see that those aspects of gay people in books, like that resonates a lot for me, and I think it's something that stands to be dealt with a lot of care. And I think Reed did that with Fabian, and I think she really did it pretty well with Troy. You will find out in my role model video coming out Thursday morning. Final thing, I'm reading. So after we finish with Rachel Reed, the main thing that we will do in August is the Captive Prince series. I'm very interested to dig into that, and as best as I can tell, the books are quite short, so I can do. Hopefully, I'll have time to do like supplementary research. I know people are interested in like the live journal aspect of that. I'm interested to dig into that. I'm very interested to get out of hockey. This is too much hockey. We will not be doing hockey books for a while. But we're gonna have a little palate cleanser in between Captive Prince and Game Changers, and that is Saint by Sierra Simone. And I decided to casually read Priest and Sinner, so I had the full context of that book, since it's the third book in a series. I don't know that I'll read the novellas or the short stories in it. So I just finished Priest literally this morning, and boy, did I not like it. I have a video up on my Insta and my TikTok about the main character, Tyler. Father Tyler. God, Tyler and Poppy. Those names. Boy. I have a videos up about how he misuses jealousy and envy, which is just shocking for someone who is supposedly like a Christian theologian. Got to the end of the book, and it's just like, it's not for me. I can absolutely see why it will be for some people, why it might be for some people. And like so many people are like, oh, the audiobook. And I'm like, well, guess what? I didn't read it on audio. I think it is very erotica. So if you're into that, if you're into using books like this for their erotic purpose, I think that's probably pretty good. And I've been working through this a little bit. I did a series of stories on my Insta. I'm still thinking about it. There will be like a short section in my Saint video about this, surely. But I think that, like, I refer to it as Catholic cosplay. I think that's like pretty apt, but it feels like it feels like it's engaged with religion and Catholicism specifically at a level where if you have either a religious kink or religious trauma or both, that you could get something out of the book while feeling like fairly psychologically safe, because I feel like it's just not very engaged with religion very deeply, and that the author probably has more spiritual outlook on religion, and that has kind of infected the story. That's where she wanted the characters to get at the end, but it kind of bleeds through all the beginning as well. So I think honestly, I think that like my dislike for it, well, I didn't like the writing so much either, but and uh author friend of mine, mentioned they're interested in my take on Saint, and they've read that. They said that they were interested in my opinion about the first person POV, and I think I know what they were talking about, because I think it's present in this first book, which is uh it doesn't make sense. Like, the POV doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because it feels like it is cramming in a lot of third person style narration into a first person POV, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel like the inner thoughts that character would have. And they said that it's that authors who write first person POV like this are writing third person with a hat on. I think that that's like a very good way of putting it, that they're smuggling a lot of third person into first person. And I think especially if you read it on audio and it's just like pretty sounding writing, that you might not bother you. It bothered me a lot in this book, because I was constantly like, he wouldn't be thinking this. And some of it just has to do with like, a man would not be having these thoughts. Like, looking at Tyler looking at Poppy and remarking on her Peter Pan collar. I'm like, he wouldn't know what that is. But anyway, pop the stack. I think that if you want to use this, if you want to engage with if you have some religious issues, positive or negative or neutral, that you might be able to engage with it in a fairly psychologically safe way with a book like this, where it's not like so deeply engaged with religion. But I was expecting there to be a greater engagement with religion, possibly because the book is called Priest, and I didn't get that. And also, a lot of it didn't read particularly Catholic, although the final chapters kind of felt a little bit more like that. But especially in the early side, I was just like, where is the Catholicism in this book that's supposedly about the Catholic faith? Couldn't find it. Wasn't there for me. So you can look forward to that in about 2 weeks. But for now, I need to get ready, shower, get dressed, and hop on a train to New York City. And I will be reading The Long Game on that train ride, and hopefully not getting embarrassed by all of the spicy content that I am reading in public. I probably won't be, because like when I'm reading that, I have it on my Kindle. Well, I have it on my iPad with the Kindle app on one side and then the Notes app in the other, and I'm like taking all these detailed notes. So it is kind of clinical for me. But like sometimes clinical can be hot too. I don't have like a doctor kink or anything, I don't think.